Welcome to All About You and For You, the podcast where we dive deep into real life stories, uncover insights, and spark conversations that truly matter. I'm Neha, the host for the podcast, joining with Rutvika Acharya, an aerospace engineer turned entrepreneur whose journey from India to Sweden began at the age of 10.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Rutvika. Rutvika has been named as one of the top 111 talents in Sweden by Nova Talent in 2024 in software, cloud, and IT category, and is also a top 10 finalist for Young Idea of the Year 2025, a national award recognizing socially driven business ideas from young entrepreneurs shaping Sweden's future. So, let's dive in because this podcast is all about you and for you. Let's start at the beginning. You moved to Sweden at the age of 10. Uh, do you remember what this transition has been for you?
Um, I think it's like representative of any change that you go through in life. But at first, it was difficult. I really did not like it. I remember complaining to my dad almost every day that we want to go back home to India, where our friends were, where our family was, where we were understood because of the language. But over time, yeah, I've become very well integrated, or I feel more at home here as well. So yeah, now I finally feel like I have two homes. But initially, that transition was difficult.
Mhm. And do you have any childhood memories of yours where you could, compare back in like life in India, and if you want to see how was your early life in Sweden?
Yeah. I mean, early life back in India, you would also know, you come from joint families, right? So for me, every weekend, every festival, every birthday, I was used to being at least 15 to 20 people in the house at any given time. So from that to coming to Sweden in a small town like Sandviken, we were 30,000 people, and yeah, our family of five. So for us, that transition was very different, or it was a very different type of childhood all of a sudden, where I didn't have my cousins or my aunts, uncles, even my neighbors that I was so close to around me anymore. I think yeah, that's kind of the biggest childhood memory. But then it could also be small things, right? Like hospitality is so big in India. You invite a guest home, you want the guest to eat first, and you wait for them to do that, and then mom, me, my siblings, we would eat later. And I remember dad having invited one of their colleagues at home, and instead, yeah, we're literally just staring at them, and they're wondering why is the family not eating. So it was a lot of funny, I think, anecdotes that took place because of the cultural differences that were existing.
Mhm. And since you talked about culture here,
Yeah.
so was it easy for you? Because as the culturally, India and Sweden are very different.
Yeah.
But there are few similarities as well, I believe. So, how was it in terms of language or in terms of, school studies? How was it for you?
Yeah. I remember like the first day of school. Initially, you're very excited, right? I didn't even know where Sweden was on a map when I was moving. I just knew I'm going abroad and I'm going to Europe. But I didn't understand there would be a language I don't understand, that people don't speak English at that age. So me and my brother get to school. It's the first day. Everyone's just talking English in class, and we're just sitting there. And every day we would have an hour or two of Swedish classes. The rest was us just sitting in the classroom, staring at the ceiling, or trying to figure out what they were talking about. So it was quite, I would say, isolating and lonely. And also constant reminder that we were different. So unfortunately, like I had to go through a lot of bullying when I first moved here, and that was also a big part of the initial experience, because I was not used to feeling different or even thinking that I might be different from someone else. But suddenly I understood I am different because of the way I look, or the fact that I don't understand the language, or that my culture is different. So that was the first time I understood the meaning of being different.
I clearly understand because when you look different, you are actually perceived differently.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I wanted to ask the same question which you just answered. So in your school time, when you were, I think, 10 years at that time, and when you moved here, uh, what was in terms of bullying that happened? Uh, how was your, how did it affected you in terms of, emotionally?
Yeah.
Or how it has transformed you as a person? Like maybe you might have become more stronger, or it might have gone the other way. You might have more gone introvert into your studies. So how was your behavioral change that happened during that time?
I think like growing up, like I said, with 15, 20 people, you're somehow socially extroverted, just being around so many people growing up. But I was also a very extrovert kid in general. I liked making friends. I liked to talk, um, be with people in general. Unfortunately, due to the bullying, I did go into my own shell where on one hand, I think I became, and this affects me even today, where I'm very conscious about how I'm perceived. I don't want to stand out too much, or being afraid that I could be judged. Even though that's not what the kids were doing, right? Kids bully because it's fun. There was no agenda behind it. But for me, it was a way to feel that maybe I don't look correct, or I don't look good, or I'm doing something wrong. And so yeah, I ended up becoming very introvert, where I remember at some point we changed schools, and I would not engage with other kids because I didn't want to try to make friends anymore. I just wanted to study and go home. And I went from being the kid, because I've always been a nerd. So I used to love to go to school. And back in India, if I was sick, I would still try to convince my parents I need to go to school, to a place where I would try to be sick so that I could avoid going to school. So yeah, it was, it has impacted definitely how kind of I have transformed as a person.
So coming from an, I would say, extrovert personality, you transformed into an introvert.
Yeah.
And this is also because you it was because you had less friends in the school. And what was it that because we often come into a situation where you're often being bullied, but you always have at your back, okay, I have some friends with me. So how had been your social circle or your close friends in the school that time?
Yeah. So up until high school, I had very, very few friends that I would engage with. And it's not to say that all kids are bad. There's always just a few, right? The rest of them were super nice to me and very welcoming, curious about where I come from, what am I, doing here, what language do I actually speak. But it was not until high school that I started feeling comfortable, for example, with the language, with myself a little bit more. I got into a high school which was also quite competitive, so everyone else was as nerdy as me, if you can put it that way. So suddenly, like, I have a group of 8 girlfriends, and we are still really close friends. I met 2 of them just last weekend. So high school was when I started kind of feeling a little bit more in my environment, or comfortable, and making friends again.
So then I have a very interesting question on this. So you have shared before, how you have transformed from, I would say, extrovert to introvert, and then from introvert to coming into being an entrepreneur today. So, how did you evolve into the leader or an entrepreneur from, a kind of person who has been very focused on studies or very introvert as a person?
Yeah. I mean, being introvert is not necessarily bad, right?
Mhm.
There is this perception sometimes that it is,
Mhm.
but I would say it has helped me to become maybe a better leader or a better
Mhm.
person in general because you listen more, and you only speak when necessary.
Mhm.
And I think that has been helpful as well because I remember in one of my previous jobs, a manager once told me that you don't say a lot, but when you say things, they're highly relevant or you raise relevant questions. And
Mhm.
maybe it comes from the fact that I don't always need to be the loudest voice anymore. Like I was comfortable not to have attention on me. So I would just sit and listen.
Mhm.
And yeah, that has kind of been a part of it. And what you were saying was quite interesting. Like I went from being extrovert to introvert to entrepreneur. And I would say I'm back in my element of being more extrovert again.
Mhm.
And a lot of that transformation happened when I graduated and I actually moved abroad. And English was the kind of language to be
Mhm.
spoken. I was
Mhm.
always very comfortable with English, right?
Mhm.
I mean, our schooling's all in English back home. So when I moved away I lived in Liechtenstein, US, Singapore. I met
Mhm.
so many international people who had all been through similar experiences during their childhood or in their adulthood when they had moved abroad.
Mhm.
And you suddenly met like minded people who also had been through similar things, which helped me open up more and more and more
Mhm.
to a place now where I go to networking events and I have to
Mhm.
talk up to strangers.
Mhm.
It's still nerve-wracking. I'll say that I still feel very introvert when I'm at entrepreneurial
Mhm.
networking events,
Mhm.
but I'm much better than what I used to be before.
Mhm.
um,
No, I mean, this is really interesting because, as I understand from you, what you're saying, like how you have transformed is strongly linked to your exposure,
yeah,
moving abroad, traveling different countries,
yeah,
meeting people from different cultures.
yeah,
And I think that's also uh, help you
yeah,
in, for your own, you can say, transformation.
yeah,
Because you got the environment, you got people, you got, a safe place where
yeah.
you could, feel speak up kind of, I would say, happen with you. So were you always driven for studying science and engineering, like from your childhood days?
um, I think like there is a perception, right?
Hmm.
Coming from an Indian
Hmm.
household, that you have these two options of engineering or being a doctor. In my case, actually, my dad, as well as all my, aunt, uncle around me, they all come from finance background. So becoming an engineer or doctor was not really. They were happy if we would go into finance, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, none of us kids wanted to do that. But for me, I like solving problems, and I was good at mathematics. That was the extent of what I understood. I thought engineering meant if you're good at maths, I'm gonna enjoy it. So that's why engineering was somewhere in the back of my mind when I was a kid. I had heard about it. I knew that if you're good at maths, it's good for you, or you might get into it. And that's how I knew. But it wasn't until I moved to Sweden and we were sitting on the flight. It was my first time sitting on a long haul flight, and I think even second time ever in my life on a plane, um, where I'm really scared of turbulence. And I asked my dad, like, I'm scared, like, how is this thing flying? And he's like, planes have the least amount of, statistically speaking, accidents.
Hmm.
And I, how's that possible? We're up in the air. So that's where my curiosity for actually
Hmm.
aerospace came in. It was
Hmm.
moving to Sweden. So without that, it wouldn't have kind of sparked that thought in me, probably. But being scared of turbulence and wanting to understand why is it safe drove me to want to know more about aerospace. And then it sounded cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie. There was not, yeah, it was a bit of a childish thought
Hmm.
process as well.
Hmm. Hmm. And I would say this is something you might have always dreamed about. after you get, a bit of awareness about after talking, having a beautiful conversation with your father. And as a kid, we are always very curious.
Exactly, exactly.
So that might have evolved more as a dream and more of, studying or further
Yeah, yeah,
pursuing something like that. So, when it comes to the decision of
yeah,
studying or going for engineering,
yeah.
vehicle engineering, as I understand you have done, and as well as aerospace engineering you have done. So, was it driven by somewhere inclined to because of how we have as our Indian household environment?
Yeah.
Is it because your father wanted you to do something like that, or it was more like your own motivation? You wanted to study this, and definitely you had support of your parents as well in this.
Yeah. No, I was, l- let's say, my parents have never really been forcing about what path of education,
Mm.
but education is very important in our family. I think that was the baseline. And that even comes from the fact that my grandmother, she fled home in her generation back in India just to study.
Mm.
So getting education was a non-negotiable, but then what education wasn't um, the criteria. When I was in high school, I realized that I'm still quite good at maths and physics, and it felt that I could actually do engineering because I enjoyed mathematics and physics. It was not just that I was good at it, I actually liked to, when there's a problem in maths and then you have
Mm.
this step by step how you can break it down and then you get to the answer, like that feeling of breaking something down in a very systematic way and then finding the answer,
Mm.
um, and then knowing that there is actually a correct or wrong answer. I think I was very black and white at that time.
Mm. Mm.
um, that's what drove me to go for engineering. And then you asked me about schooling before, the differences
Mm.
between India and
Mm.
Sweden. Like there was a moment during my high school where my dad was offered to move back to India,
Mm.
and I had gone from like wanting to move back to India to me. I was the reason that we stayed back in Sweden because I refused to move back to India because I
Okay.
love the
Mm.
schooling system so much.
Mm.
Because someone who likes maths or physics or to break down problems, the schooling here was so hands on. So
Mm.
I really enjoyed it that I could, I had the freedom. Like English would mean I can read a book of my choice, make my opinions about it.
Mm. Mm.
Maths or physics would mean solving problems, or we used to work with like turning and milling machines. We've made our own like chess pieces. We've made a spaghetti measurement and gone into young entrepreneurship. Like it
Mm.
was very hands on.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so that made me realize more that okay, engineering could be something
Mm.
for me. Yeah.
Mm. And you also feel this is the best part of education here if
Yeah.
you compare back home.
Yeah.
Here we have more of hands-on experience of building something or working.
Yeah, I think more like
Hmm.
applicable than
Applicable.
theoretical.
Hmm.
And as
Hmm.
mentioned, like language is a good example because
Hmm.
I remember, I still remember some of the poems that used to be in my English book back home in India. And then you have to answer what the poem was
Hmm.
saying.
Hmm.
And then I came here and English meant pick a poem of your choice or a book of your choice, read it, and then tell me what you think about it. So it was enforcing a lot of like, what are my thoughts? What are my
Hmm.
opinion? Not what is the poem saying, but how do I choose to interpret it? And for me, that was really empowering that I got to have a say in how I, want to interpret something. And then can I express that or not? That's what counts in a language. So I think being an entrepreneur today, where you have to be on stage, you need to be able to sell your ideas, you need to be able to explain what the problem you're solving is. The Swedish education system has helped me become better at that because there was always a focus on expressing yourself. So I think that part is what I really love about the education system here, which got me to want to stay here. Yeah.
Amazing. So you have moved from aerospace engineering to entrepreneurship. So my
Yeah.
question here is, what made you,
Yeah.
to shift from engineering to completely entering into a managerial position
Yeah.
or going into more like, a leader,
Yeah.
I would say, or coming into entrepreneurship. So, what was it that, motivated you
Yeah.
to have that shift actually?
Um, so I have actually said since a very young age as well that I want to do something that counts. Like impact drives me, and it could be impact of influencing a family member, or like I've tried to write blogs since I was maybe 12 or 13 years old, wishing that it could impact someone's life. Maybe naive of me to think like I'm going to change lives, but somehow that is what motivates me. Like if I can work on something that could make an impact in the world, like how cool would that be? Imagine people would remember me by, okay, Rutvika changed this little thing in the world, but she helped change that. So I think that's what motivated me. I've always known I want to do it. I never had the courage until 2 years ago when I finally kind of just quit my job. But I think it was about timing or feeling that risk taking appetite being there or not. Yeah.
No, and I strongly can resonate here, what you
Yeah.
said here. So, you always have some things lined up in your life,
Yeah.
as always, and it's always the best time, when things fall in place and you
Yeah.
actually start doing it. So this is amazing. So this section I want to talk more on your role as a CEO
Yeah.
for the company Caplyzer.
Yeah.
And what is the company doing as of now, and what vision do you have for the company for the coming years?
Yeah. So yeah, we have a startup named Caplyzer, and we're a deep tech startup that is actually a spin-off from research at KTH, or the Royal Institute of Technology here in Stockholm. And what we are essentially doing is helping with a green transition. So it is about climate impact, and we're working on green hydrogen. Now, someone might think like, why hydrogen at all, or why even green hydrogen? So hydrogen as a gas, it's very energy dense. It is actually used by steel, petrochemical, ammonia industries, but all the hydrogen we use today globally comes from fossil fuels. So it is a really big CO2 emitting industry today, as big as the entire aviation industry's CO2 footprint. So we need to get rid of it, let's put it that way. And there are solutions to produce green hydrogen now, where you essentially you take water, which is H2O, and then you use green or electricity to split the water from H2O into H2 and O2, and that's how you get your green hydrogen. But those solutions today are quite expensive. So economically, it's never been viable to change from fossil fuel hydrogen to green hydrogen. And what we've done, or our founder, Professor Joydeep, and his PhD student at KTH, they have invented a completely new type of electrolyzer, which is where green hydrogen is produced, which makes it really cost efficient, but also safer and scalable. So that's kind of what we are trying to do. We want to have a solution that can actually accelerate the global transition to green hydrogen instead of the fossil fuel based hydrogen, and reduce the CO2 footprint.
And the company, I think it's you started the company Caplyzer in 2023, if I remember correctly.
So yeah, 2022 they started it.
2022.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have also read about like Caplyzer has recently been recognized among the top 15 startups in the EU. And from, it has been selected from 1,500 applicants who have pitched for 2025 EU Startup Summit. And I want to give you congratulations for that. And so just I wanted to share wanted to know about, a moment when you have been receiving this acclamation, I would say. How had been for you, and, a feeling, how had been for you and for your team as well?
Like we're really excited. I'm going to Malta in 2 weeks, so keep fingers crossed that I actually end up winning. But no, it was a very it's gonna sound fake, but it's true. That I had somehow forgotten that I had applied for this, because like a big part of the job is that you're constantly reaching out to investors, reaching out to different opportunities where you could pitch, yeah, grants, and so I didn't remember that I was awaiting this response. Maybe it could also have been because somewhere I felt that, I mean, it's EU. There's so many amazing companies out there. Um, yeah, the probability that we get selected is gonna be low. So I had probably buried it somewhere. Like, okay, I've done. I've applied. It's over. And then the email came, and first I was like reading it. Like, is it spam? Is it really true? And then no, like then I felt pride. Kind of like, okay, wow, this is actually we're two startups from all of Sweden that got selected, and we get to be one of them. Like it's and it's all thanks to, I mean, yeah, Professor Joydeep's invention, right? He is the mind behind all of this. But to help bring his idea and innovation on a European stage, that's really humbling. Yeah.
As Caplyzer is helping for, I would say, accelerating green energy and net zero transition. So I just wanted to understand, like, how did you get into this space?
Yeah.
And why does it matter to you personally?
Yeah. So I got into this space out of a little bit of a coincidence. But I was working on my own startup when I actually met the founder of Caplyzer. And as mentioned, for me, impact matters quite a lot. My own startup, it's a tech startup, it's a social impact company, where I realized that timing and the market is not really mature for it yet. So I was trying to figure out what is my next step. Do I continue on it? Do I wait it out? Yeah, how do you manage your finances as well, right? It had already been a year and a half since I'd quit my job. So when I met the founder of Caplyzer, the first thing that clicked to me was he was talking about green hydrogen. And I don't come from that space, but still heard about it. It's somehow this buzzword that a lot of people have heard about. And for me, it was like, okay, this means there is a market out there. There's an opportunity, because why would so many people know about green hydrogen or talk about it? So timing wise, it felt like, okay, there is really a cool opportunity here. And then, yeah, hearing more about what he had actually done. This was also his fifth deep tech startup. All of his startups are in the space of clean tech, green tech. So I know he cares about impact. That got me really motivated. Like, imagine getting to work with someone who also cares so much about impact, who's coming up with brilliant ideas, and then getting to go back home to KDH, where I also studied, and having this support system where I get mentored on a weekly basis by them. It's a luxury as a founder to become a better entrepreneur. So for me, that was really, really enticing, that I get coaching and work on something with someone who is really inspirational. Yeah.
So how was it for you in terms of, building and leading, I would say, climate tech startup?
Difficult, the honest answer. I joined in October, and apart from the founders, we were kind of restructuring the team. So I was the only one there, and coming into something where obviously a lot has been done in the past, but you're trying to figure out what is the game plan without having electrochemical knowledge. Like, how does this even work? It was overwhelming at first. At the same time, I don't want to let down the person who has spent years, even inventing this particular idea. So in the beginning, I would say it still is overwhelming. It never goes away, but I'm very thankful for my own startup, because I had learned a little bit more about what to expect. Because being an entrepreneur, an early stage entrepreneur especially, it's very uncertain. You have no idea. You cannot look beyond 4 weeks at a time. You have a vision, of course, but there could be everything from funding to things that change, to customers that decide to not pursue further out of the blue. So you're constantly facing rejections on top of it. Like, any investor you reach out to, they say no. Customers, like 90% of them are going to say no to you, right? So I was a bit more prepared this time to go in that it's gonna take time. You need to be more strategic about like who you approach, not just blindly cold call everyone. But also that it's okay to face rejections. There are gonna be a lot of them. It's okay. It's nothing personal. Just learn from it, improve. Learn from it, improve, because that's how you get to, where one day we're gonna become successful. So it's it's been difficult, but also I would say more fun being a climate tech startup, because there's a lot more focus on it. So when you do talk about green hydrogen and what we're doing, the type of response I get is very different to my own startup. Like people are actually interested to know more about it or want to have meetings with you. So I think it's cool to work on something which is buzzing in the market,
and which is also contributing to the society as well.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're working for a sustainable world.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is amazing. So I just wanted to know, like, how does your typical day look like as a CEO of Caplyzer?
Oh, that's a good one. Usually a lot of meetings, but in general, so we sit at the lab at KTH, where our prototype is, where we have a team of 3 engineers who work on developing it, optimizing it, and then professor to kind of guide us through all of that. But my typical day, it's being a CEO of a startup. To be honest, doesn't really mean anything except that you have to do marketing, sales, fundraising, operations, look at bookkeeping. I mean, literally anything and everything that needs to be done to keep the company moving and alive for another day, week, month, or year. And that's what usually my days look like. So it's a lot of, okay, if I have investor calls, scheduled, because we are currently fundraising. So right now I have a lot of investor meetings scheduled. But otherwise, it's trying to find new customers, understand what's going on in the market. Like you discover new competitors all the time. So I do a lot of research on what are people actually doing. Find pitch events to go to, and then just solve operational things. It's a lot of a little bit of everything, I would say.
And are you able to balance your personal life and professional life?
Let's say yes and no. Personal life, for me, unfortunately, personal and work life is very connected, because if I'm not motivated in my work, I don't feel motivated in my personal life. Like, I don't know if that's an unhealthy relationship. Maybe a therapist should, let me know. But somewhere I need that. Like, it really drives me. I need some sort of motivation to keep me going, and work is a big part of it, where I feel like, okay, I can do something different and change. But yeah, there are times where it becomes exhausting, because part of being, I mean, we're a team of 5 right now in terms of kind of full time, and despite how much I work, there's always work I've not finished. Like, my to-do list is never gonna end. I'm never gonna have a day where it's like, oh, now we've done everything. There's nothing else to do. Let's, start tomorrow. And that can be overwhelming, because you feel like you're never enough somehow, which can lead to stress or anxiety that creeps into, obviously, the personal life quite a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Now moving on to something more on the personal life
Yeah.
we want to have now. So since you're married to a Swede,
Yeah.
how has that shaped your perspective on blending culture, tradition, and values?
Yeah, I mean, we are really blending culture, tradition, and values. So yeah, my husband, his name is Jesper. He's half Swedish, half Finnish, and had never been to India until we met. So it was really like I remember his first trip to India. I took him for Navratri, because I love dancing, and I was like, okay, if we're gonna be together, you gotta be able to do Garba. There's no other way out. So I really took him into a shock off where there's thousands of people just dancing together. But I love that aspect about our relationship. We There's funny things that happen all the time where I'm like, what is that word that you just used in Swedish? I've never heard of it before. Or he kind of thinks that I say very funny things when I'm talking to the family, or how we, you know, growing up, we're sleeping 10 people on the same bed because that's how you fit. And, you know, when I took him to India, we did the same thing with him, like just squeeze in and find space. So it's more about, it has shaped a lot in terms of it is possible to mix cultures. You just have to be open to each other's way of being without judgment. Like, there's a lot of times, yeah, maybe like a personal thing, but coming from India, right? Like, I had heard before that, you know, out in Europe or US, families are not as close as we are. And so I had that perception in mind. But being pragmatic doesn't mean the families are not close. I almost wish we were a bit more pragmatic back in India, you know? So coming in without judgments, or coming in without, like, there is a right way to do things, because like you get challenged in that aspect in our relationship. I've been challenged in that aspect, and he has been challenged on his, because he came with preconceived thoughts about what it means to be Indian or the Indian culture, and I came with preconceived ideas about European or Swedish culture. And then you have to kind of blend together and not judge each other for how they're doing things, but rather understand why. And I think that's really cool. Like, you open up your mind to being less judgmental in general, but seeing beautiful. Like, I can now pick and choose how much of the Swedish culture I want to have, how much of the Indian culture I want to have. Like, you can have best of both worlds.
So talking on a language here, so do you think language, knowing Swedish, I would say, has helped you in forming, I would say, a more warmer bond as compared to if you would have not known Swedish and you would have met to Jesper?
I don't know, honestly. I don't think so. And I say that because I see him when he goes to India with me. And I'll just take like I think it's a beautiful example. But my Masi, or maternal aunt, they don't speak. I have 5 Masis, and they don't speak English as much. And Jesper does not speak Gujarati, which is my mother tongue. But the bond between them, and including my mom, actually, my mom does not feel, even though she understands, she does not feel comfortable with English. But the bond is really beautiful. Like, when my mom comes to visit here, and I would be going to office, and Jesper works a lot from home, I could be coming home to them both being in the kitchen, because he loves to cook, where he's making rotis and she's, like, and they are communicating somehow. So sometimes, like, you think that language is what's needed. And same with my Masis, like, they don't understand, but they will go up to him and they'll use sign languages, and he'll use sign language back, and then they communicate. And I see how much they care for each other. Luckily, we have English. Like, I would not want that situation to be with my partner, that we don't have any common language. But I feel like it's been more than language that really made the relationship. Yeah, and exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Looking at your journey from India moving to Sweden at the age of 10 years, and today successfully accomplished yourself as the CEO of the Caplyzer, and also the finalist for the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. I just wanted to understand, if you look back to your 10 year of Rutvika, what advice would you like to give to 10-year-old kid today?
I think I'd tell her, you don't need to know the answer to everything. It's okay. I think the mathematician in me got so used to wanting that step by step and then landing into an answer which is right or wrong, that especially when I came into the world of entrepreneurship, it was really challenging because there's so much uncertainty. You don't know what to do, what idea to work for, which business model to choose, which customer to target, what segment to go for, how to hire a team. Like everything is an unknown. And you try to find right answers in that, which brings up so much stress, pressure. And then at some point, I learned to just gotta do it. Because if you keep on thinking about it, nothing gets happen, and the to-do list is getting even longer. So at some point, it's like, even if I don't know the answer, if I think this is more or less what we need to do, relying on myself, on my gut feeling, on my abilities, and we are moving forward, right? And if you make a mistake, you do it again. So I think the pressure she put on herself and I put on my younger self was always trying to do the right thing or having the right answer. And it's a big learning now. Like, you don't need a right answer to everything.
And you just keep on trying.
Yeah,
keep on trying.
just
Taking
do.
risks.
Yeah,
I would
just
say.
do it. Yeah,
Just do it. Just do it. Yes. So, what does success mean to you, and how do you see yourself
Yeah.
today, or is it the definition is changing for you with your growing age, or with
Yeah.
in your journey?
I think definition of success has changed a lot for me. Being a young kid who wanted to be an aerospace engineer, success was I would be working at NASA until I actually was about to finish my master's and realized I don't want to work within aerospace engineering. I love people. I think that's where my strength is, to be with people, lead people. So I want to go into management. How do I do that? So suddenly that dream had changed a little bit, and the definition of success. But where definition of success for me has changed the most is being a startup founder, because you come from the corporate world where you have KPIs, right? So success is revenue, customer growth, how big is your team, profitability. I have none of those. Like the first startup I did, right? Day one, what do you have? Nothing. You don't have a product. You don't have a customer. You don't have, obviously no revenue as well. You're no team. So what is success? And it made me feel like a failure almost every day. Like the first startup was very difficult because of that. But it has now made me rethink what success means. And I think success is not really about the traditional KPIs that we think of. For me now, success means even if I get that first customer or the one hire we do or getting into EU Startup Summit, like the small wins that are helping you reach your visions, as long as you're taking tiny steps but towards the right goal, that for me is success. Like getting one step closer every single time and like not giving up. I think
and important is to keep moving forward.
Exactly. So I think perseverance is for me success, because and I'm proud of myself as well for it, because it's taken 2 years to persevere, to to not have income. Like, it's a lot of risk you're taking, but as long as you keep on doing it for if you're getting closer to your goal, it's okay, it's worth it, you're successful.
Okay, so my last question for you for our podcast today: what is your why, and what is it that keeps you motivating you every day, of pursuing or working towards what you're working today?
It's like, at the risk of sounding maybe a bit cliche, but it is still impact. Like, I want to change the world. I've always had that kind of dream of mine. I don't know in what scale it will be, big or small, does not matter, but I want to, for me, that's the purpose to life, is that I was able to make some impact in the world. And that keeps me going. Like, as long as I'm working on something that could help me do that, in whatever capacity, that makes me excited. Like, you can see it on my, like, I want to get going now, but that's the why for me, to make a change.
And to be a change maker.
Exactly.
Okay, and with this, I just wanted to wind up our today's episode. Thank you, Rutvika. Thank you for coming to the studio and have a recording with us. As we wrap up our today's conversation, I hope that young generation who are watching or listening this podcast feel more seen and more inspired. Uh, Rutvika's journey is a proof that no dream is too bold and no path is too conventional. Uh, and when it is walked with perseverance, clarity, and purpose, uh, nothing is unstoppable, I believe. So, this was all about you and for you. Until next time, stay curious and keep believing in your journey. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rutvika, for joining with us and sharing insights with us.
Thank you for having me. I think I'm gonna live on this high and maybe a little bit embarrassed or humbled. I don't know. Yeah, thank you. Wanting to listen to my journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, thank you again.